Good morning. Welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. Got a gardening vlog for you today. We just had some baby goats born, so obviously we're gonna look at those guys first. I've been mulling over a lot regarding the garden in my head over the last few weeks because 'tis the season. Right now is the time we really start garden planning, and I've been saying a couple things for a few years, like how I want to put in some more perennials, and I'm finally gonna be doing that this year. Hey, Moo. Good morning. Good morning, my goats. You ready to come out? Christine's little girl, we've been calling her Trinity in honor of her 3 teats. Are you guys ready to come out? I've got him. Don't worry. Here's Jupiter. And then this is Ilara. Here, Mama. Oh, there's your baby. These are Elpis's boys here. They've already been out with the herd. We have Turd and Bucky. All these babies are mini La Manchas. We love them. This is the first day that the herd has seen these two. They've been locked away with Mama for a couple days. Don't worry, I still love you, Tori. Even though Talia never left the barn, locking her away for just a couple days has shifted something in the herd dynamic. It always happens when you put a goat away for whatever reason. Whenever you let them out, they need to work it out. So they're gonna be doing this for a few hours. So we'll let them work that out, and we'll come back and check on the babies and the mamas in a little while. All right, so this took me a little bit over an hour to put together, and this is the 9-in-1 configuration from Vigo Garden Beds. Apparently there's 9 different ways that you can put this kit together. This one is gonna fit best here and work best for what I'm gonna do. Especially when you have a large bed like this, sometimes it can be hard to set it down completely flush on the ground. It might be a little hard to tell, but there's a gap right here. That side you can see a little bit better because there's some light coming through. This is genuinely not a big deal. The only issue is that soil can kind of fall out of that spot and wash out of that area. So what I'm gonna do is lay down this weed fabric inside of the bed and kind of put it up against the walls just to hold in some of the soil. So you did see that we just plopped it down on top of some grass. We do deal with a lot of like Bermuda grass and things in our garden. This isn't really gonna do anything for it. Weed fabric is very temporary in what it can do, especially for Bermuda grass. But the main thing that I'm trying to do is just to keep the soil in. This woven weed fabric here is water permeable, so excess moisture can definitely still drain down through. If you've been around the channel a while, you've probably been in my raised bed garden before. I've been talking for a couple years about making this more of a perennial space, and this year I am actually doing a lot to convert this into more of a perennial space. And that bed we just put up is part of that, and we'll plant that in just a minute. But much of this, or part of this, is already perennial. So over here we've got asparagus, and there's also wine cap mushroom spawn in there. I do have some elephant garlic here, which that's not exactly perennial, but it does tend to come back very readily. Over here I have some strawberries. They're just now starting to get going for the season. And in the past right here, I've grown a lot of annual things. That is going to change. So I just bought officially this muscadine grape, and there's actually 2 of them in the pot here, which I didn't know they were gonna do. It's very exciting, but this is the Carlos muscadine grape. And essentially a muscadine is like a wild grape. They're a lot bigger, their skins are pretty thick, they're used a lot in wine and in making jellies and jams and things. And you can eat them fresh, they do have some seeds. And like I said, that skin is a little bit thick, but I hear that they're delicious. This is definitely one of those things that I've wanted to put in the garden, and I am gonna do so. I have been hemming and hawing of whether or not I should put them in the garden right now because it's been really warm here. These were grown in South Carolina. We are gonna get another kind of cold dip coming up soon, and I don't want to shock these guys into dying. So I may hold off on putting these in the garden right now, but this is where they're gonna live. I'm gonna put one on this trellis and one on that one, and then I'll be able to plant something in front of them for sure. But I still wanted to show them to you and give you a little bit of context for this space. But back to this space over here. So I have tried for a few years to grow blueberries. All I had really been looking at with purchasing blueberries was the freeze hours, which is very important. Blueberries, actually quite a lot of fruiting things, like quite a lot of different fruiting trees, need a certain number of hours of chill in the air before they're going to set fruiting blossoms, and that's very important with blueberries. So I looked at that, and I looked at, you know, growing zones as you do with a lot of things, and that's as far as I went. And I did not realize until very, very recently that blueberries actually need an acidic soil to thrive. What we're growing in here is clay, and actually clay gets a bad rap, but it does grow things quite well, at least for us, but it is quite alkaline, and my blueberries just have not thrived, and they have not made it through the winters that we've had, probably because they haven't been able to establish well in the soil that I've asked them to grow in. So that's what we're doing here. We're going to be filling up this bed. Blueberries really like a lot of organic matter, which isn't present in a lot of clay soils. So we've got a bunch of raised bed soil right there, plus I bought a soil acidifier. So these here are legacy blueberry plants. I've gone through a couple different varieties. I think I bought misty blue or powder blue blueberry one year, and I can't remember the other years. But I selected this variety because it doesn't get super, super tall. I think it said 4 to 5 feet wide and 4 to 5 feet high, and I think that's gonna work for us. One of the reasons that I wanted to stick the blueberries in one of these beds, one of these Vigo beds, besides the fact that I needed to be able to manage the soil acidity a little bit better than I was that Vigo actually has specially made like tents that can go over beds like this. So let's say we're experiencing an issue with birds. You can probably hear that we've got lots of birds around here. So far they've left our blackberries alone, but who knows, they may want to partake of our blueberries. Being able to put on one of those protective nets very well could be vital for us to get a harvest later. And so I was keeping that in mind when we selected this bed. Could we make like a custom net over any kind of bed? Yeah, absolutely. But this particular bed already has a very nicely made kind of cover system that can go over it, and I liked that. So as far as the soil acidifier goes, I know that this soil needs acidifying because I tested it. This little soil tester, I bought it for like $10 at the local farm store. I put it down in my new soil. Can't tell what it's reading in the camera, but earlier it was close to 8. Oh, it actually says 7. 7.5. 8.6. So pretty darn alkaline, actually. This is the soil acidifier that I bought, and it says you can cast 12 pounds per 100 square feet. it says 1 tablespoon per plant around the root zone. So we're gonna do that. That's what it looks like. It's sulfur based, this particular soil acidifier. That might have been a little extra. I'll do a really quick garden update before I show you the other beds that I got. We have some parsnips that have germinated. I can't remember how long it took, at least a few weeks. Our broccoli is looking pretty sizable. Look at this one. Did you guys notice that? Was that on my face before? And believe it or not, our pea trellis is actually somewhat recovering. Do you see this? We have some live peas. Our last decent cold snap, even though I had the greenhouse closed up, my peas did not fare well, but looks like they didn't completely die. So that's good. We might actually get a harvest. I think I'm gonna go ahead and pick some Brussels sprouts this weekend. So over here, I have some different looking beds that I would love to talk with you about. These particular beds are from Vigo as well. They're a little bit different than what I have over in the raised bed garden for now, because they have these casters on the bottom, and these are actually a semi-solid bottom. They actually have these wicking cells underneath. Let me pull this out. So there's this water reservoir, which I've filled, and then this wicking tray with air pruning strips goes in the top. And what this does is it actually holds any excess moisture that maybe falls from the sky via rain or from the hose, and it makes it available to your plants as they need it. This is called their wicking cell, and I'm very excited to try this out in the greenhouse. You can see I've got this planter back here that I have had a hard time keeping watered in the summer, and I think that this is really gonna help. You can probably see back here I've got some new plants. And this here is what we're going to be putting in these beds. This is a bonfire peach tree. So the bonfire peach tree is a container variety. I think online it said it gets about 5 feet tall and about 4 or 5 feet wide. I thought about planting them in the ground because we do have quite a bit of land here, but online it said make sure to protect peach trees from wind. And in the past, if you have been here for very long, you know that we have had some very intense wind situations, and there's really no wind protection for anything here on our farm, except for here in the greenhouse. So if you're wondering at all, that wicking cell in the bottom of this Vigo bed does not completely close off the bottom. It'll hold as much water in that tray as the tray is designed to hold, which is about 3 inches of water at the bottom. But anything above and beyond that does come out of the side of the bed through the seams here. I tested that out earlier because that concerned me. One of the common errors when planting trees is a lot of people like to hill up the mulch or the soil up against the trunk of the tree. You don't want to do that. With trees, you really just want to set them as deep in the ground as their original planting pot. And that's just so we don't damage the trunk. So that actually only took about 1.5 bags of soil, plus the tree. This soil that I have here, it's from Evergreen. It is a little bit more barky, so I am going to use that as the mulch. The rolling feature of this bed does work very well when you have a hard surface. The reason that it's not rolling super well in the greenhouse right now is because most of the year it's very sludgy and squishy underneath this weed fabric. And that's the next topic of discussion. Big changes here in the greenhouse, at least in my mind for now. But I'm getting more and more sure every day that things are gonna look different in here by this time next year. There we go. That's where the peach trees are gonna sit for now. You're gonna have to pardon the sound of the Black Hawks the military is training tonight. But a little bit of backstory and context. So we are growing in southwestern Kentucky, which is zone 7B. And the zoning really just tells you how cold it gets in your area in the winters. And I think our zone, like the coldest that we see, should be around, maybe it's -10. This is what my hands are gonna look like too. I'm gonna talk with my hands, so sorry about that as well. But truthfully, most of the year we are able to grow quite a lot. Our growing season is over 200 days, which really allows us to grow a lot of our own food. Now, some of the things that we have a hard time growing are things that I'm trying to grow right now. So like that broccoli, the Brussels sprouts, lots in the brassica family, as well as things like lettuces, kales, stuff like that. And all of that really is what we used to buy at the grocery store. I would buy cruciferous vegetables very, very regularly. And I got this greenhouse so we could really grow more of that. The issue that we have here is our summers come on fast and hard and hot. And so the brassicas just don't do well. They'll immediately bolt when the summer hits. And it's also really hard to try to get as much volume as I would like out of fall brassicas. These brassicas I've been trying to grow for a long time, and they've had a little bit of a struggle. Now, a lot of plants, even the brassicas, even the cold tolerant plants, will go somewhat dormant over the winter. Even though they survive, they may kind of quit growing. And we see that a little bit here in the greenhouse, but for the most part, the greenhouse keeps the plants in here heated enough to grow well as if it's springtime. The major issue that we have with our land is that it's muddy. It's really muddy and mucky. As I mentioned before, it is clay, but it does grow things very, very well in the summer. When it's hot enough to where the ground doesn't stay saturated, when our grass is growing and the grass soaks up a lot of moisture, we don't have a lot of moisture issues in our in-ground garden. Until it comes to this time of year, the fall, winter, and early spring, it's nothing but a mud pit, and it's very hard to grow in ground in that kind of a situation. My cauliflower over here, the coloring on the leaves, the fact that they're dying, this is all due to oversaturation of their roots. Except for this one, I did do a little bit too much meddling in the center of this plant and I killed it. But as you can see, we do have stress colors. It's bleaching out a little bit. This is not good. The fact that my Brussels sprouts didn't really get as big as they should, that could also be from saturated roots. The mud, it just comes through the weed fabric that I have in here, and it's squishy and it displaces. I have sung the praises of weed fabric, and I still will. I think weed fabric is awesome when you want to just plant in a space and have to worry about minimal weeds for that season. The weed fabric is really great. It's been really great for us. It's just not great year after year after year. We do have to peel it back and amend the rows. I have to sweep it off. I have to weed through it because stuff does grow through it, especially where you have like the staples that hold it down. Like right here, these are actually, they're hard to get out. It's really hard to get out anything that happens to grow through the weed fabric. It's also been difficult for me to grow any kind of root vegetables in the greenhouse. We did just put in that larger Vigo bed this fall and it's been awesome. We harvested lots of carrots and rutabaga out of that, and I really want to be able to do more of that because those are things that I can't really grow over the summertime here either. Long term, what I would like to do in here is convert this greenhouse into a raised bed greenhouse. I think that we're going to be able to get more out of it and enjoy this space a lot more. We are still going to be able to grow year round, but as far as the fall and winter and early spring, the reason that we have a greenhouse, I think it's going to be easier on us to be able to grow in containers where we can just control a little bit more of the variables that tend to be important when you're trying to grow things. It's going to be kind of a slower transition. It's going to take me probably about a year to switch up the greenhouse into being raised beds. What I would like to do is put down a good thick layer of mulch over the weed fabric that's in here to create a better floor, something to walk on. That will get weeds in it as well, but it's far easier to pick weeds out of mulch than it is off of the weed fabric. And truthfully too, the pathways in the raised bed garden, those are grass and clover and whatnot, and I just take my weed whacker to that every once in a while. And we take the weed whacker to the insides and outside of the greenhouse in here as it is, and so that's an option. I don't really mind if we grow weeds as long as I don't have to sink into the ground and deal with mud most of the year. So that's the plan. It's kind of loose. It's a loose plan that also is kind of solid, if that makes sense. I know what I would like. It's just executing that is going to take time. The reason that I'd like to go with these metal beds as opposed to wooden beds like we have in our other raised bed garden is that these beds here are going to last about 20 years. That's incredible. Levi built our U-shaped raised beds in 2020 and it's 2024, and you can very nearly put your finger through some of those beds. They have just rotted away. So by the time we finally get the soil really good in those beds and really start to be cranking out food in them, they're starting to fall apart, which is pretty frustrating. So we're just trying to lessen the amount of physical labor that it's going to take to maintain our gardens. We do a whole lot here on this homestead, and so Vigo helping us in the garden department has been awesome. I do have an affiliate link for Vigo Garden Beds if you'd like to check that out. Any purchases that are made by clicking on that link do help our homestead out, and so I appreciate that. Anyway, I promised you more baby goats by the end of the video, so let me wash my hands. They'll at least be rinsed. What are you doing?
Oh, he's eating slugs.
He's eating slugs, good boy.
Brady likes clovers and chives.
Are you able to catch him?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. All right, because we don't want any runaway chickens.
He's easy to catch.
Good.
We put them in there, they just jumped out.
Well, hello. Hello, loves. Tori. It's getting hard to run, Clover. Clover's due. I think it's March 11th, so less than a month. It's hard to run. Hi, Mommy. How's it going? Laura. One, two, three, four. Christine. Oh, there you are. Are you protecting your daughter? I'm just checking on her. Hey, sweet girl. With baby goats being born and getting our hands in the dirt today and the warm weather that we've been blessed with lately, it really is starting to feel like spring. I know that our estimated last frost date is still right around 2 months out, and that seems insane to me. So thus starts the very anxious waiting for the spring and summer garden, but it'll be here before we know it.